Hello and welcome to Irish Voices. I'm Donagh Mckeown. You're very welcome to Conversations with the Irish Diaspora. It's rather wet in San Francisco today, so we're staying indoors. Wise move, don't you think? On the programme today, we'll be hearing from a radio presenter who's from Ireland and who now broadcasts in San Francisco. And we get to meet the grandson of Thomas MacDonagh, the Irish Proclamation signator. And Niall MacDonagh will introduce himself by quoting one of his father's favourite poems.
Crossing the shallow holdings, high above the sea, where few birds nest, the luckless foot may pass from the bright safety of experience into the terror of the hungry grass. Here in a year when poison from the air first withered in despair the growths of the spring, some skull-faced wretch whom nettles could not save crept on four bones to his last scattering. Crept, and the shrivelled heart which drove his thoughts towards platters brought in hospitality burst as the wizened eyes measure the miles like dizzy walls forbidding him the city. Little the earth would claim from that poor body, and yet, remembering him, the poor grass he nourishes, racks with his famine, sucks marrow from the bone. I'm from Dublin, Ireland, originally. I've been in the US since 1969, and my original plan was to stay about 3 years and get some job experience and return back to Ireland. But fate had different plans for me.
Why did you come in the first place?
Well, in those days, jobs were very hard to come by. I was called to the bar, and but the idea of practicing law just didn't appeal to me. If I'd known that at the beginning, I'd have done something different. But it just was not going to work for me. It was a hard decision. My mother asked me why shouldn't she talk to Charlie Haughey about getting me a job, and I wouldn't let her. Sometime later, my older sister asked me why I wouldn't let my mother do it. Wasn't that betraying Ireland, emigrating instead of taking advantage of something like that? And my attitude was that taking advantage of that would be a betrayal of Ireland.
Your family history is steeped in the making of modern Ireland.
That's for sure. My grandfather, Thomas MacDonagh, executed May 3rd, 1916. He was a poet and a playwright as well. And he was getting better as a poet. Yeats wrote of him that he was coming into his fourth. He might have won fame in the end. And then there were Thomas's sisters-in-law. His wife was Muriel Gifford, my grandmother, and she was a sister to Grace Gifford, who married Joe Plunkett on May 4th, 1916, or actually the night of May 3rd, and he was executed May 4th. And so the two sisters, Muriel and Grace, lost their husbands within 24 hours.
How much did you know, were you told about your grandfather and his influence in Ireland?
Well, it's something that's around you the whole time, maybe not so today, but this, growing up in the 40s and 50s, there was still a great awareness of the rising in Ireland, and it was a little bit of a problem, if anything, because you couldn't go any place, do anything, but people knew who you were and where you were coming from. And that was exacerbated by the fact that my father was probably as famous at the time in Ireland as his father. He was a poet and a playwright and a district justice and a broadcaster on Radio Éireann, as it was at the time, doing ballad programs and quiz programs and all sorts of other stuff like that. But he had, in the 40s and 50s, he had 3 plays produced. One of them, Happiest Larry, actually went to Broadway, though it died an ignominious death there. So it was a hard thing, you know. You just watch it, having a lesson on Lament for Thomas MacDonagh in class, you know, and being asked to recite it because, well, that was my grandfather, you know, that type of thing. One of the things actually after I left Ireland was that I found that I really needed to leave Ireland, escape that and find my own identity.
So it was overbearing?
It was just there all the time. And it could be good or bad, you know. There were friendships I had that I never knew until many, many years later were based on what my background was. And one situation, I can't go into all the details of it, but where some enmities were formed, and there was a feud going on, and I was definitely on one side of that, but I was exempt because of who my grandfather was. So even though I was sort of really watching where I was going and careful, always ready to run, I was exempt.
So your father told you much about his grandfather, because he didn't really know his own father or mother.
The only thing that he remembers is calling out to his father, "Féach at Lushah Pal," speaking of Irish, English, and French in the same sentence. And his, you know, that was just the way that family was. He grew up. His father spoke Irish to him, his mother spoke English. Well, 2 stories. One is the house was surrounded by the British after the Rising. You know, soldiers laying on their bellies with guns trained on the house, you know, as if they thought there was a garrison inside of there. And my grandmother taking him out of the house, and he wanted to walk along the backs of the soldiers. And she said, "No, that might be dangerous." So he was taken to the house of his grandmother, Isabella Gifford. Now, remarkably, the Gifford family was a Protestant Unionist family. I shouldn't say Protestant entirely, because the father, Frederick Gifford, was Catholic, but the mother was very anti-Catholic. How she ever married her husband, God only knows. And even though the boys were supposed to be raised Catholic and the girls Protestant, or was it the other way around? I don't remember. They were all raised Protestant. And so my grandmother brought our children, Donagh and Barbara, over to their grandmother's house. Barbara was just a baby at that point, but my father was 3.5 or so, and he was given a fan to play with. And Isabella started giving out to Muriel about letting Tom go into the Rising. And my father became quite annoyed that his mother was being harassed and broke the fan. But he didn't remember that much.
Your father didn't become political in the sense that your grandfather had been. Was that a...
Never did, really. I think he didn't necessarily feel a need to, maybe, or because it was just a bit hard. He did at one point, and I don't remember all the details of this, so I think it was... He got a lot, as a young barrister, he got most of his business from the state. And it was again the state supporting the children of the revolution. But then he signed some sort of petition about that had to do with executions or whatever. I don't remember all the details. And all of a sudden he didn't have any business left. He lost all the government work that he had, and it was a hard time for him. He said for the next few years, most of his income came from writing. As I recall, and my relatives told me, I was fairly comfortable in my own skin. I came out of Clongo, was very shy, and having very little self-confidence. And then I discovered O'Donoghue's pub. And it was an amazing time. I didn't start going there till after the Dubliners had made their name, and Sweeney's men had made their name and left also. And they couldn't come back to play with any regularity because the place was humped anyway. But I did make a lot of friends, particularly the McKenna brothers, who are largely forgotten today, but Ted McKenna, as far as I'm concerned, a totally different style of singing from Luke Kelly, but he's as good a singer as Luke Kelly ever was. And that just became my home, you know. And then one night, Ted Fury says to me, Neil, how come you don't play an instrument? And I said, well, I don't have the talent. I had tried to learn to play instruments, and everybody gave up on it. So he tried to teach me a little something on the fiddle and said, well, I'll make you a bowron. And about 50 years later, I'm still playing the bowron.
Good teacher?
Well, actually, he didn't teach anything. His advice to me was to sit down in front of the record player and practice. And the other piece of advice he gave me was play with your hand at first. Now this is my beater.
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't use any of my other fingers. Well, the only time I ever did was and I haven't done it in a while, but somebody tried to tell me you couldn't play triplets when you use your hand. And I rolled it like this some way, but I can't do it anymore. So, okay. Well, this is my new bowron, and by new I mean I've only had it for 20 years. I want to tell you about that first one though, that Ted Fury made for me. For a cheap bowron, what he would do is he'd go and buy a garden sieve, and you could almost see through that skin. It's certainly translucent, and he used hanger wire for crossbars. And in spite of that, you know, I think he used to charge £4 for it. And to put that in perspective, at the time, a pint was a half crown. So that was about 32 pints. And anyway, that bowron served me for 28 years. And the amazing thing was that it always sounded good. And I even had, I remember on my honeymoon in Tralee, a bowron maker offering to swap me a bowron that he'd made for this one that I was playing. First of all, I didn't have to worry about being married American. I didn't have to worry about a green card. And a few years later, I didn't have to worry about citizenship. I could apply for, instead of having to wait 5 years, I could apply after 3, though as it turned out I waited 7 years anyway. But my plan was to stay about 3 years. But it became fairly clear that my wife was not about to go back to Ireland to live. She loved Ireland, but didn't want to live there. And then we started having children,
And where did you live at first?
We lived in upstate New York, originally in Glens Falls, then later on down in Schenectady. Then we moved to New Hampshire, which was where I really sort of began to break out and find myself and find my abilities. And I actually started a company in New Hampshire, and we did very well.
Doing what?
But in the trust business, trust and investment management. You know, strange, but given my background, but I was good at it. I sold the company and tried to start another company, and this time I lost everything I'd made in the first one, or most of what I'd made in the first one. Got divorced.
And how many kids?
Pardon?
How many children?
3. Turlock, Deirdre and Dylan. And then moved out to California, and you know, nothing particularly interesting in the rest of my life that I particularly want to talk about anyway.
And you're here now and living here, and as a member of the diaspora, have you been tempted to go back, or?
If I was living alone, I would think about it. But my partner Judith has a daughter and grandson living in Mountain View, not far away. And she would not, if I want to go back to Ireland, we would have to split up. It'd be as simple as that. But going beyond that, I've looked at housing costs. Unless I want to be in Dublin, I could, sell what we have here and buy something for half the price in, say, Ennis in County Clare. But you read too much about what's happening with medical care there, and it's just terrible. And my Medicare would not go with me, because that's only good in the US. So that would be the big hang up.
You're going back this time, you're going back in March. It's going to be an emotional time for the whole of Ireland, or very much a looking back. How do you think that will go for you, and how special will that be for you?
I don't know. The government tried to do this as a very low-key thing, and they just weren't allowed to. It's one place where the people actually took control. And unlike the 75th anniversary, where there were almost no government functions commemorating it, I don't know. What I'm looking forward to is meeting some old friends again, sitting in a few sessions. Getting together with family. We are coming up a little bit short of having every living descendant of Thomas MacDonagh there, but we'll be coming down close. That'll be just one night. The problem is that there's so much stuff going on, and nobody's there for exactly this. I mean, I'm the only one there, I think, who's going to be there for a full 3 weeks. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm not particularly interested in the official events. I'll go. It's sort of expected of me, but that's not where my heart will be.
And a big thank you to Niall MacDonagh. Let's hope he's having a wonderful time in Ireland as we speak. So let's hear from a very interesting gentleman who's all the way from County Dublin, but now lives in the East Bay and broadcasts in San Francisco and KPOO.
I'm DJ McShmormac, presenter of Gramophony Baloney on KPOO, and it's a show that specialises in recordings from 1950 or earlier. Tip light there, Slim Gaillard from 1947, taking us up to 4:15. Before that, Paul Robeson with Lawrence Brown accompanying him on piano. Lawrence Brown was his longtime musical collaborator, although the track with piano accompaniment earlier I played was with Rutland Clapham. It seems like they only did one session together. So Lawrence Brown there accompanying Paul Robeson on a 1942 recording, Within Four Walls, credited to Mussorgsky, with a bit of Paul Robeson singing in Russian, presumably in there.
The music is all, and the music and all the contributions are pre-1950, 1951.
1950 or earlier, yeah. Except there's a new rule that just kind of got invented there recently, is that if it's a leap year day, because this year is a leap year and the leap year day, February 29th, falls on a Monday. So I was saying for a long time, people were going, oh, would it kill you to play something later than 1950? And I said, well, there has been stuff that I've got, and it's kind of, I've gone, oh, it's from 1951. Oh, if only this was from before 1951, it would be so good to play on the show. And the list of those kind of things has been growing. So this year, February 29th, I'm going to do a show of all post-1950 recordings, all from 1951. I'm going to go really modern. And it's going to be like, it's a once every 38 year occurrence. So the next time February 29th will fall on a Monday will be the year 2044. So I don't know if, maybe, NPR might have given me like a big suitcase full of $1,000 bills to leave KPOO. Who knows, KPOO could be sold off to the son of or the offspring of Rupert Murdoch and Jerry Hall. They're getting married now, I'm sure they have a fruitful marriage. 1932 before that, Brother Can You Spare a Dime, co-written by Yip Harburg, who co-wrote The Wizard of Oz with Harold Arlen, whose birthday it is today. But Harold Arlen had no part in the Brother Can You Spare a Dime song, but I just thought it was kind of loosely related to today's birthday theme. Then from Cuba, Arsenio Rodriguez y su conjunto from 1948 with Soy Tu Destino. Well, I was employed in the public sector when the global economy started to go off its tracks, and the then government of the day were sort of made a little assault on the civil service pay and conditions, and one initiative they launched to bring down public sector spending, so to generate money to bail out the private investors, was this public servant or the civil servant incentive career break scheme, where they would pay you money to take a minimum of 3-year career break, which could be extended to a maximum of 5 years, but you'd only get paid for the first 3 years, and then at the end of the 5 years you had to either resume or resign. So I had, just before that was launched, well, nearly 2 years before that was launched, I'd gotten married to a US citizen, and she needed to go back over, and it was kind of uncertain, but I was kind of unhappy in my job, and she wasn't super happy in Ireland, but there was family stuff going on back here that she needed to be here for. So took a leap, and we decided that we would try and live here and build a life here and raise our young child here rather than in Ireland.
You didn't really get into the kind of diaspora community so much. I mean, you've stayed within kind of an American situation rather than buy into the whole idea of being Irish abroad.
Yes, I'm like a maverick, I think. I think a maverick is a cow that wanders off from the herd. That's what a maverick is. I'm a maverick. So yeah, I don't need to connect too much with the Irish diaspora. No, they don't need me. They're doing They're doing fine without me, they are.
And yet, having listened to your radio programme, you like to get your piece in about Ireland and what's happening there.
It says here, anyone outside of Ireland wants to know why Irish people are so angry. Right, this is dated February the 2nd. Yesterday, as in February the 1st, saw the completion of an inquiry into what happened on the collapse of the economy. The cost of this inquiry was €5 million, and the terms of reference were set by both the government and the bankers, which resulted in an inquiry in which nobody could be found guilty of wrongdoing. Seriously. It now appears that we, the Irish, were forced by the European Central Bank to pay back billionaires who had taken a gamble and lost. Also, the bailout resulted in the people of Ireland paying back 198% of gross domestic product, while Portugal, who were also bailed out, had to pay back 2%. That's 196% less than the Irish. Well, there's no escaping the fact that I'm Irish, and you might as well take an opportunity to kind of put something out there that might help people understand where Irish people are coming from, because just because I don't have an Irish entourage doesn't make me any less Irish, as a maverick. But we went to Children's Fairyland in Oakland, and there was this juggler, and he'd spent a few weeks in Galway, and he was an expert on everything Irish, and he was kind of lecturing me. And the downturn in the Irish economy was all everybody in Ireland. It was all their fault for being over dependent on property growth. Just like the famine was the people all their fault for being over dependent on an abundance of potatoes. And he really got me irritated, So I do you get people and they ask you, there's people that are interested in aspects of Irish life and current affairs, So yeah, sometimes like today, and I just kind of thought for the there's people going to be watching Irish Voices. They're going to be likewise curious about Ireland, and that's the big one at the moment. The findings of this taxpayer-funded inquiry, they're pretty stark, So yeah, I got that in because you're here as well. You see, sometimes in physics, a reaction is affected by it being observed. The observer effect.